When the HFY Dominion first encountered humanity, their xenobiologists classified them as a moderate threat species. Bipedal mammals with basic tool use and primitive chemical propulsion technology. The report, filed in the Galactic Archive under Species Assessment 7429, Terra noted their peculiar tendency to persist in hopeless situations but dismissed it as simple biological stubbornness common among prey animals. That assessment would prove to be the most catastrophic intelligence failure in galactic history. The HFY had conquered 47 worlds using the same proven strategy: orbital bombardment of population centers, followed by systematic resource extraction. Their plasma lances could turn forests into glass deserts in hours, reduce mountains to slag, and boil entire oceans. No species had ever continued organized resistance after witnessing such devastating displays of power. But as Fleet Commander Zarketh would discover, while staring at the smoking ruins of what the humans called the Amazon rainforest, humanity had a disturbing habit of rewriting the rules of warfare. The woods were indeed reduced to cinders, the cities lay in rubble, and their primitive military had been scattered to the winds. Yet somehow, impossibly, the humans kept fighting. This is the story of why the galaxy learned to fear a species that refused to die, even when death was the only logical option remaining. The first plasma lance struck the Amazon at dawn, turning 3,000 square kilometers of rainforest into a hellscape of molten glass and ash. Fleet Commander Zarketh watched from the observation deck of the dreadnought Dominion's Fury as centuries of growth vanished in seconds. The thermal bloom was visible from orbit, a spreading cancer of orange and red that devoured everything in its path. "Beautiful work," purred his aide, Subcommander Veltara, her scaled hands dancing across the tactical display. "The human's primary oxygen producer is now effectively neutralized. Their atmospheric composition should begin degrading within 30 rotations." Zarketh nodded, though something nagged at him as he watched the destruction spread. In 47 previous conquests, this moment had always marked the beginning of the end. Species would witness the obliteration of their most sacred sites, their capitals, their centers of culture and life, and their resistance would crumble like sand. Surrender delegations would arrive within days, often hours. The communication array crackled to life. "Fleet Commander, we're receiving transmissions from the human military networks." "Surrender terms?" Zarketh asked, settling into his command throne. "No, sir. They appear to be regrouping." Zarketh's eyes narrowed. On the tactical display, thousands of small signals scattered across the planet's surface. Instead of fleeing toward the poles or underground caverns like every other species had done, the humans were converging toward the impact zones, toward the devastation. "Show me their capital," he commanded. The main screen shifted to display the smoking ruins of what the humans called Washington. The massive governmental complex lay in ruins, its iconic structures reduced to twisted metal and rubble. Yet even as the feed updated, Zarketh could see movement among the wreckage. Not the panicked flight of refugees, but the organized motion of soldiers establishing defensive positions.
"They're fortifying the ruins," Veltara observed, her voice carrying a note of confusion.
Why would they make their stand in the most damaged areas? Before Zarketh could respond, another aide approached. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from multiple locations across their primary continent. Weapons charging?" "Unknown. The signatures don't match any technology in our databases. They appear to be cooking fires." Zarketh's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Cooking fires? In the middle of a planetary invasion?" The aide nodded nervously. "Yes, sir. Thousands of them. The humans appeared to be preparing food. This was unprecedented. In every previous conquest, surviving populations either surrendered immediately or fled to remote hiding places to await inevitable capture. They didn't regroup in devastated areas and start preparing meals. "Analysis of their communications?" Zarketh demanded. "Still encrypted, sir, but our linguists have identified several recurring phrases. Remember the Alamo? They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom, and what appears to be a human war cry, come and take it." Zarketh had heard variations of these defiant utterances from other species, but they typically came from small, isolated groups making final stands. The disturbing aspect of the human communications was their scale. These phrases were being broadcast across their entire global network, repeated by millions of voices in hundreds of different languages. "Sir," the communications officer called out again, "we're receiving a direct transmission from the planet's surface. It's addressed to you personally. Route it through." The main screen flickered, replacing the tactical display with the image of a human male. The creature was clearly a military leader. His bearing suggested command authority despite his primitive appearance. What unsettled Zarketh was the human's expression. Not the fear or desperation he expected, but a cold, calculating fury. "I am General Marcus Rivera, current commanding officer of Earth's remaining defense forces," the human said, his voice carrying clearly through the universal translator. "You've destroyed our forests, leveled our cities, and killed millions of our people. Congratulations. You've just made the worst tactical error in your species' history." Zarketh activated his own transmission array. "I am Fleet Commander Zarketh of the Kethvar Dominion. Your resistance is futile. Surrender now, and your surviving population will be relocated to designated preservation zones." The human's mouth curved in an expression that the cultural database identified as a smile, though it carried no warmth. "Preservation zones? How generous. Let me explain something about my species that your intelligence files apparently missed. We have a saying, you can't defeat someone who refuses to quit. Today, you're going to learn what that means. Your civilization is in ruins, Zarketh replied. Your military infrastructure is destroyed. Your industrial capacity is crippled. What exactly do you intend to fight with? Everything, Rivera said simply. Rocks, sticks, our bare hands if necessary. You see, Commander, you made one critical mistake. You assumed that destroying our infrastructure would destroy our will to fight. But humans don't derive strength from our buildings or our technology. We derive it from something you apparently can't understand, the absolute refusal to submit to tyranny. The transmission cut off, leaving Zarketh staring at a blank screen. He had conquered civilizations that possessed technology far superior to these humans, species with natural advantages like telepathy, enhanced physical capabilities, or centuries of military experience. None had spoken to him with such casual confidence in the face of overwhelming defeat. Sir, Veltara ventured, perhaps we should accelerate the pacification schedule, deploy ground forces to eliminate these remaining pockets of resistance. Zarketh considered this. Standard doctrine called for orbital bombardment followed by a gradual ground occupation, as surviving populations surrendered or were rounded up. But something about the human response troubled him. In his experience, species that talked this boldly either possessed hidden weapons or were engaging in elaborate bluffs designed to buy time for evacuation. Begin surface sweeps, he ordered. I want to know what these humans are actually capable of. The first Kethvar ground units deployed to what had been the city of New York. The massive metropolis lay in ruins, its towering structures collapsed into mountains of debris. Thermal scans showed thousands of human life signs scattered throughout the wreckage, but they weren't behaving like survivors. They were moving with purpose, coordination, like soldiers preparing for battle. Captain Thekran led the first squad through the devastated streets. His armor sensors painted the environment in stark detail, twisted metal, pools of cool glass, and the acrid smell of burned synthetics filling the air. Perfect conditions for a quick sweep and pacification operation. The first indication that something was wrong came when his point soldier simply vanished. One moment, Trooper Velquan was advancing down what had been a major thoroughfare, his weapon sweeping for targets. The next moment, he was gone, as if the rubble itself had swallowed him. Velquan, report. Thekran commanded through the comm system. Silence. Squad, converge on Velquan's last position. As the remaining 5 soldiers moved toward where their comrade had disappeared, the ruins around them began to shift. What Thekran had taken for random debris revealed itself as camouflaged fighting positions. Humans emerged from concealment with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Not the primitive chemical firearms his intelligence reports had described, but sophisticated energy weapons clearly salvaged and modified from Kethvar equipment. The firefight lasted less than 30 seconds. When it ended, Thakran found himself alone, surrounded by silent ruins and the bodies of his squad. The humans had vanished back into the wreckage as quickly as they had appeared, leaving behind only the lingering smell of ozone and burned plasma. Similar reports began flooding in from across the planet. Ground units deployed to devastated areas found themselves facing organized resistance using tactics that defied conventional understanding. The humans weren't trying to hold territory or protect infrastructure. They were using the destruction itself as a weapon. In the ruins of London, Kethvar forces encountered a labyrinth of tunnels carved through the rubble, turning every advance into a deadly game of three-dimensional warfare. In Tokyo, human fighters had somehow weaponized the electromagnetic interference from the bombardment, using it to mask their movements and disrupt Kethvar communications. But it was the reports from Chicago that finally got Zarketh's full attention. They've turned the entire ruins into a fortress, reported Major Kethval, his usual composed demeanor cracking. Every piece of debris, every collapsed building, it's all part of an integrated defensive system. They're using our own plasma scarring as cover, redirecting our energy weapons discharge to create kill zones. Sir, I've never seen anything like it. They've weaponized the destruction itself. Zarketh studied the tactical feeds with growing unease. The humans had taken the devastation that should have broken their spirit and transformed it into the foundation of their resistance. They were fighting with captured HFY weapons, using destroyed buildings as fortifications and employing tactics that seemed to anticipate every standard pacification protocol. "How are they coordinating without centralized communications?" he asked. "We're not entirely sure, sir. They appear to be using a combination of primitive analog systems, reflected energy signals, and what our analysts believe might be coded messages transmitted through environmental manipulation. Controlled fires, reflective surfaces, even organized movement patterns that spell out information when viewed from above." The more Zarketh learned about the human response, the more disturbed he became. These weren't the desperate actions of a broken species clinging to false hope. This was systematic, intelligent resistance that had adapted to catastrophic circumstances with terrifying efficiency. "Sir," Veltara approached with a data pad, her scales pale with concern. "The latest casualty reports from our ground forces." Zarketh reviewed the numbers, his blood growing cold. In just 6 rotations, human resistance had eliminated more Kethvar personnel than any previous conquest had lost in the entire pacification process, and the humans showed no signs of weakening. If anything, they seemed to be getting stronger. "Prepare for Phase 2 bombardment," he ordered. "Target every major population center simultaneously. If they want to fight in the ruins, we'll give them nothing but ruins to fight in." But even as he gave the order, Zarketh felt a creeping certainty that he had miscalculated something fundamental about these humans. They had absorbed devastating orbital strikes, lost their infrastructure, and watched their world burn, yet somehow transformed those losses into tactical advantages. He was beginning to understand why General Rivera had smiled. The plasma lancers charged for another strike, their targeting computers calculating optimal impact points for maximum destruction. But in the ruins below, humans continued their impossible work of turning catastrophe into warfare, defeat into defiance. The woods were indeed reduced to cinders, but the humans kept fighting, and Zarketh was starting to suspect that no amount of fire would be enough to stop them. The second wave of plasma bombardment began at solar noon, when the human homeworld's primary star reached its zenith. Zarketh had calculated the timing carefully: maximum thermal stress on the planet's surface, optimal atmospheric conditions for plasma propagation, and symbolic impact that should have shattered any remaining human morale. Every major population center on the planet's surface received simultaneous strikes. Mumbai, Lagos, Sao Paulo, Mexico City, Cairo, ancient human settlements that had survived thousands of years of wars, natural disasters, and social upheavals disappeared in moments of incandescent fury. The bombardment was so intense that the planet's albedo shifted measurably as continents of forest and grassland transformed into fields of black glass. "Planetary surface temperature has increased by an average of 47 degrees, reported the science officer. "Atmospheric composition is shifting toward carbon dioxide saturation. Estimated ecological collapse timeline, 15 rotations." Zarketh nodded grimly. No species could maintain organized resistance on a world that was rapidly becoming uninhabitable. The humans would either surrender or perish. Either outcome served the Dominion's purposes. The communications array remained ominously silent for the first rotation after the bombardment. No surrender transmissions, no plays for mercy, no desperate attempts at negotiation. Zarketh allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Perhaps these humans weren't as exceptional as their initial resistance had suggested. Then, the reports began arriving from the ground. "Sir, Patrol Unit 7 has gone dark in the ruins of Mumbai. Patrol Unit 12 reports heavy resistance in what remains of Lagos. They're requesting immediate extraction." "Sir, we've lost contact with the entire 3rd Regiment deployed to the Sao Paulo crater." Zarketh's satisfaction evaporated. "How is this possible?" "Our scans showed complete sterilization of those areas." Major Kethval appeared on the communication screen, his armor scorched and his usual composure completely shattered. "Sir, they're underground. The humans have somehow created a massive tunnel network that spans entire continents. The surface bombardment didn't reach them." "Impossible," Veltara interjected. Our deep penetration scans showed no significant subterranean structures. They built them after the first bombardment, Kethval replied, his voice carrying a note of stunned disbelief. In 6 rotations, they somehow excavated thousands of kilometers of tunnels, connected their surviving populations, and established a completely functional underground civilization. They're not just surviving down there, they're thriving. Dare. Zarketh felt the first real flicker of unease. Explain thriving. They've got manufacturing facilities, agricultural systems, training grounds for their military forces, and what appears to be a complete command and control network. Sir, they've taken the rubble from our bombardments and used it as raw material to build an entirely new infrastructure beneath our feet. The tactical display updated with new intelligence, and Zarketh stared at it in growing alarm. The human tunnel networks weren't random survival burrows. They were sophisticated military installations designed for prolonged resistance operations. The humans had used the first bombardment as a learning experience, studying HFY tactics and adapting their response accordingly. They knew we would target the same areas again, he realized. They planned for the second bombardment. More disturbing intelligence continued to arrive. The underground facilities weren't just defensive positions, they were factories. Using salvaged HFY technology and improvised materials, the humans were producing weapons, armor, and equipment at an industrial scale that shouldn't have been possible for a civilization that had been bombed back to the Stone Age. Sir, the science officer called out, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from multiple underground locations. The readings don't match any known human technology. Show me. The main screen displayed a 3-dimensional model of the tunnel networks beneath what had been North America. Bright nodes scattered throughout the system pulsed with energy readings that made Zarketh's blood run cold. Those are fusion reactors, he breathed. They're powering their underground cities with fusion reactors. Impossible, Valtara insisted. Our intelligence reports indicated that human nuclear technology was primitive at best. They couldn't possibly have developed fusion power in a matter of rotations. The science officer's next words sent a chill through the entire command deck. Sir, spectral analysis suggests these reactors are built using modified HFY technology. They're using our own power cores against us. Zarketh closed his eyes, trying to process the implications. Somehow, in the span of days, humanity had not only survived 2 devastating orbital bombardments, but had reverse-engineered advanced alien technology and integrated it into a planet-spanning resistance network. Get me General Rivera, he commanded. The communication took several minutes to establish, but humans were routing it through multiple relay points in their tunnel system, making it nearly impossible to trace the source. When Rivera's image finally appeared on screen, Zarketh noticed immediately that the human looked different. Gone was the simple military uniform. Rivera now wore what appeared to be a sophisticated command suit, incorporating HFY technology with human modifications. Commander Zarketh, Rivera said, his tone conversational. I trust you've been enjoying our little game of hide and seek. This resistance is pointless, Zarketh replied, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. You cannot win against the full might of the Dominion. Rivera's smile was genuinely amused now. Win? Commander, I don't think you understand what's happening here. This isn't about winning or losing anymore. This is about teaching you something important about humanity. And what lesson would that be? That there's no such thing as impossible when survival is at stake. Rivera gestured, and the screen split to show multiple views of the underground facilities. Vast chambers filled with humans working on projects that defied comprehension, manufacturing areas where HFY technology was being dissected and rebuilt, training centers where human soldiers practiced with captured alien weapons. You've given us the greatest gift imaginable, Rivera continued. You've shown us how fragile our surface civilization really was, and you've provided us with the tools to build something better. Every plasma lance you've fired, every piece of technology you've deployed against us, it's all become part of our infrastructure now. Zarketh studied the images with growing horror. The humans hadn't just adapted to the bombardments, they had used them as opportunities for technological advancement. They were strip-mining HFY equipment, reverse-engineering everything from weapons to environmental systems, and integrating it all into a hybrid civilization that combined the best aspects of both species' technologies.
You're using our own weapons against us, he accused.
We're using everything against you, Rivera corrected. Your weapons, your technology, your tactics. We've absorbed it all and made it better. Do you want to know the real difference between your species and mine, Commander? Zarketh found himself genuinely curious to hear the answer. Your people conquered 47 worlds using the same strategy over and over again. You never adapted, never evolved, never learnt anything new. You just repeated the same successful formula. But humans? Rivera's smile turned predatory. Humans learn. Every mistake you make teaches us something new. Every weapon you deploy against us becomes our weapon. Every tactic you use gets turned around and used against you. As if to emphasize the point, proximity alarms began sounding throughout the Kethvar fleet. Ground-based weapons clearly of Kethvar origin but with human modifications were firing on the orbiting ships. The humans had somehow transported heavy artillery through their tunnel networks and established surface firing positions without being detected. Impossible, Veltara gasped as energy beams lanced upward from the planet's surface. Those weapons require massive power sources. How did they get them into position? Rivera answered as if he had heard her question. We've been very busy while you were congratulating yourselves on your successful bombardment. Every piece of debris from your attacks, every fragment of destroyed Kethvar equipment, we've been collecting it all, studying it, improving it. You've been so focused on destroying our surface infrastructure that you never noticed we were building a new one right under your feet. The tactical display showed the true scope of the human operation for the first time. The tunnel networks weren't just defensive positions. They were a completely integrated military infrastructure spanning the entire planet. Supply lines, command centers, manufacturing facilities, training grounds, and now artillery positions, all connected by thousands of kilometers of underground passages. You turned our bombardment into a mining operation, Zarketh realized with dawning horror. Every crater you made, every structure you destroyed, it all became raw material for our new civilization. We've built something down here that's stronger than anything we ever had on the surface. And the beauty of it is, every attack you make just gives us more resources to work with. The human weapons were finding their mark now, and Zarketh watched his fleet's shield systems strain under the assault. These weren't primitive chemical weapons. They were highly sophisticated energy projectors that seemed to have been specifically designed to counter Kethvar defenses. Sir, the tactical officer called out, the human weapons are using our own shield harmonics against us. They've somehow analyzed our defensive systems and created weapons specifically designed to penetrate them. Rivera nodded approvingly. We've had plenty of time to study your technology while you were busy destroying our forests. Speaking of which, you might be interested to know that we've established thriving agricultural systems in our underground cities. Turns out that controlled environment farming is actually more efficient than what we had on the surface. So thank you for that lesson as well. Zarketh felt something he had never experienced in 47 previous conquests. Doubt. Not just about this particular campaign, but about everything he thought he knew about warfare, conquest, and the nature of intelligent species. The humans weren't just surviving his attacks, they were using them as catalysts for rapid evolution. What do you want? He asked finally. Originally, we wanted you to leave us alone, Rivera replied. But you've made that impossible now. You've shown us what we're capable of when we're pushed to our limits. You've given us technology we never would have developed on our own, forced us to think in ways we never would have otherwise, and taught us that our old civilization was just a starting point. The human general's expression grew serious. So now what we want is for you to understand that this planet belongs to us. You can keep attacking, keep trying to pacify us, keep teaching us new ways to fight, but you can't win. Because every time you hit us, we get stronger. The transmission ended, leaving Zarketh staring at tactical displays that showed a planet transformed into a fortress. The humans had taken the devastation of 2 massive bombardments and somehow forged it into the foundation of a civilization that was adapting faster than his forces could respond. As energy beams continued to lance upward from the planet's surface, each shot more accurate than the last, Zarketh began to understand why the human general had been smiling from the beginning. The woods were indeed reduced to cinders, but the humans weren't just still fighting, they were winning. 3 rotations after the human counter-bombardment began, Fleet Commander Zarketh faced a crisis that defied every principle of military doctrine he had ever studied. His invasion fleet, designed to pacify entire worlds, was being systematically dismantled by a species that had supposedly been reduced to primitive survival just days earlier. The Dominion's fury shuddered under another precise strike from the planet's surface. The humans had somehow managed to coordinate their underground artillery network with terrifying efficiency, targeting specific ship systems with an accuracy that suggested intimate knowledge of Kethvar technology. Shield generators are at 30% capacity, reported the engineering officer. Hull integrity holding, but we can't sustain this level of punishment indefinitely. Zarketh studied the tactical display with grim fascination. The human weapons weren't just accurate, they were adaptive. Each successive barrage incorporated improvements based on the results of previous strikes. The enemy was learning from every shot, refining their targeting algorithms in real time. Sir, Veltara approached with visible reluctance. I'm receiving reports from across the fleet. The humans appear to be attempting boarding actions. Boarding actions? From the planet's surface? They're using modified atmospheric shuttles. Our own shuttles, sir. Somehow they've managed to salvage and repair enough of our equipment to mount an orbital assault. The implications hit Zarketh like a physical blow. The humans weren't content to fight a defensive action from their underground strongholds. They were taking the battle to space itself. How many shuttles? Current count suggests approximately 200 craft, but the number is growing. They appear to be launching from concealed positions across the planet's surface. Zarketh activated the fleet communication network. All vessels prepare for boarding defense protocols. Deploy fighter screens and initiate close-range defensive fire. The response from his ship commanders was immediate and alarming. Captain Velnoth of the cruiser Steel Talon reported first. Sir, we're engaging the human shuttles now, but their approach patterns are unlike anything in our tactical databases. They're not following conventional assault vectors. Explain. They're using the debris fields from our bombardments as cover, sir. The humans have mapped every piece of orbital debris and are using it to mask their approach. Our targeting systems can't get clean locks. The main screen switched to external view, and Zarketh watched in stunned silence as human shuttles wove through clouds of metallic debris with impossible precision. The pilots were navigating three-dimensional obstacle courses at high velocity while under fire, treating the wreckage of their own civilization as protective cover. They've turned our bombardment debris into a defensive screen, he realized. More reports flooded in as the human assault developed. The boarding shuttles weren't conducting random attacks. They were executing a coordinated operation designed to capture specific ships intact. The humans wanted Kethvar vessels, and they were willing to board hostile warships in deep space to get them. Sir, the Iron Claw reports successful human breaches on decks 7 and 12. The boarding parties are advancing toward the ship's primary systems. What's their tactical assessment? A pause. Captain Thekmaran reports that the human boarding parties are... Sir, this can't be correct. Report. The humans appear to be conducting simultaneous engineering surveys while fighting. They're scanning our systems, downloading technical specifications, and transmitting the data back to the planet in real time. Sir, they're reverse engineering our ships while they're boarding them. Zarketh felt his understanding of warfare crumble entirely. These weren't desperate boarding actions by a dying species. They were intelligence-gathering operations conducted under fire. The humans were so confident in their abilities that they were treating active combat as an opportunity for technological advancement. All ships. Emergency jump preparation. We're withdrawing to minimum safe distance. Sir, the navigation officer called out. Jump drives are showing interference patterns. The humans appear to be broadcasting some form of disruption signal. Impossible. They don't have the technology to interfere with our FTL systems. They do now, sir. Analysis suggests they've modified captured Kethvar communication arrays to generate quantum interference patterns. They're preventing us from jumping to FTL. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. While Zarketh had been focused on the surface bombardment and underground resistance, the humans had been studying his fleet's capabilities and developing countermeasures. They had somehow learned to jam FTL drives using salvaged equipment, turning his own technology against him once again. The communication array crackled to life with an incoming transmission from General Rivera. The human appeared to be speaking from the bridge of a Kethvar vessel, one that Zarketh recognized as the destroyer Bone Crusher, which had gone silent during the first wave of boarding actions. Commander Zarketh, Rivera said pleasantly, settling into the ship's command chair as if he had been born to it. I thought you might like a progress report on our little war. That ship belongs to the Dominion, Zarketh snarled. Belonged, Rivera corrected. Past tense. We've been very busy up here while you were trying to decide whether to retreat. Would you like to know what we've learned from your technology? Despite himself, Zarketh found he was curious. FTL drive systems, advanced metallurgy, energy projection technology, artificial gravity generation. Honestly, it's quite impressive. Centuries ahead of where we would have been on our own. Rivera paused, his expression growing thoughtful. But you know what's interesting?
For all your technological advantages, your tactical thinking is remarkably predictable.
Meaning, you conquered 47 worlds using essentially the same strategy every time.
Orbital bombardment, ground occupation, pacification. It worked because the species you encountered thought in conventional terms. They tried to protect what they had instead of adapting to what they faced. Rivera's smile returned. Humans don't think conventionally. The tactical display updated with new information that made Zarketh's blood run cold. The human boarding parties hadn't just captured individual ships. They had somehow coordinated their actions across the entire fleet simultaneously. 17 HFY vessels were now under human control, their original crews either dead or captured. You captured 17 ships in a single operation, Zarketh observed, unable to keep the admiration from his voice. Captured, studied, and improved, Rivera confirmed. We've made some modifications to your designs. Better armor distribution, more efficient energy routing, improved weapon systems. Would you like a demonstration? The captured HFY ships opened fire on their former fleet mates. But these weren't standard HFY weapons. The energy signatures were wrong. The beam patterns more focused. The targeting solutions more sophisticated. The humans had somehow improved upon technology that had taken the Dominion centuries to develop. Zarketh watched his fleet take devastating losses from weapons that were technically his own, operated by a species that had learned interstellar warfare in a matter of days. The humans weren't just using captured ships, they were using better versions of captured ships. How? He asked simply. Human engineering philosophy, Rivera explained while his captured fleet continued its assault. Your people designed these ships to do one job very well. Humans designed things to be adaptable, modular, improvable. We took your excellent foundation and made it better suited to our needs. This is impossible, Veltara whispered beside him. No species develops this rapidly. Evolution doesn't work this way. Rivera apparently heard her through the communication link. Evolution? No, this isn't evolution. This is something your species apparently never experienced. Desperation combined with learning. When survival is at stake, humans don't evolve over generations, we adapt within generations. Sometimes within individuals. The human general gestured to something off-screen, and the main display showed internal views of the captured ships. Humans were working alongside salvaged HFY equipment, but they weren't just operating it, they were rebuilding it, combining technologies in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Every piece of technology you've brought to this system has become part of our arsenal, Rivera continued. But we don't just copy, we improve. Your plasma weapons are now 30% more efficient. Your shields have been reconfigured for better energy distribution. Your engines produce 12% more thrust with the same power input. You've had this technology for days, Zarketh protested. Days of intensive study by millions of humans who knew their species' survival depended on understanding it completely. Rivera's expression grew serious. You have to understand, Commander. When you attacked Earth, you didn't just threaten our civilization. You taught us what we were capable of when everything was at stake. The remaining loyal HFY ships were fighting a losing battle against superior versions of themselves, operated by crews who had nothing left to lose. Zarketh realized with crystalline clarity that his invasion had achieved the exact opposite of its intended purpose. Instead of conquering humanity, he had forged them into something far more dangerous than they had ever been. What do you want? He asked again. Originally, we wanted to be left alone. Then we wanted to survive your attacks. Now? Rivera paused, considering. Now we want to make sure this never happens again. To anyone. Meaning? Meaning that humanity is no longer a planetary species, Commander. Thanks to your technology and your object lesson in the importance of being prepared, we're going galactic. And our first order of business is going to be ensuring that no species ever again faces the choice between submission and extinction. The implications hit Zarketh like another plasma strike. The humans weren't content with defending their homeworld. They were planning to take their hybrid technology and adaptive tactics to the stars themselves. You're talking about conquest. Liberation, Rivera corrected. Those 47 worlds you mentioned, the ones your Dominion pacified, we're going to give them a choice they never had before. The choice to fight back with weapons and tactics that can actually win. Zarketh felt the last of his confidence crumble. The Dominion had created its own worst enemy, forging a species that combined human adaptability with HFY technology and the bitter experience of near extinction. Sir, his tactical officer called out urgently. Long-range sensors are detecting additional human vessels launching from the planet's surface. Analysis suggests... Sir, they appear to be full-sized warships. Impossible. They can't have built warships in this time frame. Rivera's smile was answer enough. Actually, we can. Your bombardment provided us with enough raw materials to build quite a substantial fleet. We've been very busy in our underground shipyards while you were celebrating your successful bombardment. The tactical display updated to show the true scope of human industrial capacity. Massive vessels were rising from concealed launch facilities across the planet's surface, ships that combined the best aspects of HFY design with human innovation and the desperate efficiency born of survival necessity. 47 worlds, you said? Rivera asked conversationally. That's a good start. We're thinking bigger. As the human fleet deployed around their homeworld, Zarkef finally understood the magnitude of his failure. He had come to conquer a species and instead had taught them how to conquer the galaxy. The woods were reduced to cinders, but the humans had used those ashes to forge something that would burn far brighter than any forest ever had. And now that fire was spreading to the stars themselves. The woods were reduced to cinders, but the humans kept fighting. HFY story.